The grand chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with the austere beauty of interstellar architecture, prismatic walls pulsating with light, their hues shifting in rhythm with the voices of the assembled dignitaries. Delegates from dozens of species occupied tiered platforms, their diverse forms creating a mosaic of galactic authority. At the chamber's center stood Vorik, a Zorithian of towering stature with a crystalline exoskeleton that refracted the light into a halo around him. His voice, sharp and deliberate, cut through the murmurs. "We cannot continue to ignore the humans' rise. Their ingenuity surpasses anything we've encountered in centuries," he declared, his multifaceted eyes scanning the room. Across from him, Dranth Voss, a Valexan admiral with sleek, emerald scales, leaned back in his chair with an air of smug superiority. "Your concern is misplaced, Tal. Humanity is a flash in the pan, a primitive species dabbling in technologies they barely understand." Tal's mandibles clicked in irritation. "And yet, those primitives have routed 2 of our fleets in less than a standard cycle. Tell me, Admiral, do you dismiss facts as easily as you dismiss caution?" The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, some in agreement with Tal, others scoffing at his warnings. The conflict among the council was emblematic of the larger issue, an alliance of species accustomed to dominance, struggling to comprehend a foe that refused to adhere to their expectations. A holographic display flickered to life above the chamber, showing grainy footage of a human fleet in action. Compact, yet deadly vessels maneuvered with precision, their railguns and plasma weapons slicing through alien ships like paper. The clip ended with the flagship of the previous council fleet, a behemoth 10 times the size of any human vessel, exploding in a fiery cascade. "This is what we face," Tal continued, pointing to the now-frozen image. "Humanity does not fight as we do. They exploit our weaknesses, adapt to our strategies, and innovate with frightening speed. Ignoring them invites ruin." Admiral Voss scoffed, his scaled lips curling into a sneer. "A clever ambush. Nothing more. Give me command of the fleet, and I'll crush their resistance within a cycle." The room quieted as Tal took a step forward, his crystalline frame catching the light in a dazzling display. "You would gamble the survival of this council on your arrogance? Humanity is no mere nuisance. They are a storm on the horizon, and we are unprepared." Council Elder Run, a diminutive yet authoritative figure from the THR1N species, raised his spindly arms to silence the chamber. "Enough. The council will vote on the matter. Either we escalate our efforts or we seek negotiation. Let your decisions reflect the survival of this alliance." The voting process was swift, each delegate casting their vote via glowing panels before them. When the results appeared, they were decisive. Escalation. Voriktal's mandibles tightened, though he masked his disappointment well. Admiral Voss rose from his seat, the light gleaming off his emerald scales. "I will lead the fleet," he declared, his voice brimming with confidence. "Humanity will regret challenging the might of the Galactic Council." As the chamber emptied, Tal approached Voss, his crystalline form towering over the Valexan. "You underestimate them at your peril, Admiral. Humanity does not fight for conquest. They fight for survival. That makes them more dangerous than you can imagine." Voss chuckled, brushing past him. "Let them fight. They'll find no mercy in me." Far from the opulence of the council chamber, a human scout ship drifted silently in the shadow of a dying star. The vessel, sleek and battle-worn, bore the scars of countless engagements. Inside the dimly lit bridge, Captain Elias Kane stood at the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back. His rugged face was etched with resolve, his piercing gray eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the council fleet's mobilization. "Confirm their numbers," Kane ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. Lieutenant Renner, a wiry man with a sharp intellect, glanced up from his console. "Initial count puts them at over 1,000 ships, sir. A mix of Zorithian dreadnoughts, Valexan cruisers, and THR1N corvettes." Kane nodded, his expression grim. And their trajectory? They're heading for Proxima Theta. If they take the system, they'll have a direct path to Earth. The weight of Renner's words hung in the air. Kane's crew had faced impossible odds before, but the scale of this fleet was unlike anything they had encountered. Still, there was no fear in his voice when he spoke. Send the data to Fleet Command. We'll hold position and monitor their movements until reinforcements arrive. Renner hesitated. Sir, if they detect us. They won't, Kane interrupted. And if they do, we'll make them regret it. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed the gravity of their mission. They were the eyes of humanity in enemy territory, and failure was not an option. Kane turned to the viewport, his gaze unwavering. Let them come, he muttered under his breath. We've faced worse. We'll face them too. The Galactic Council fleet assembled in the void, its ships gleaming like a constellation of death. Dranth Voss stood on the bridge of the flagship Celestial Wrath, surveying the armada with pride. His confidence was unshaken, his mind already envisioning the glory of victory. But far away, in the shadows of space, the human fleet prepared. On board the UHS Resolute, Admiral Marcus Steele reviewed the scout ship's transmission. His chiseled features were unreadable, his steel-gray eyes betraying no emotion. They're coming, he said simply, his voice resonating with quiet authority. Let's make sure they remember us. The crew of the Resolute sprang into action, their movements precise and purposeful. Humanity's finest stood ready, not for conquest, but for survival. As the first human ships began their maneuvers, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The war was about to begin. The bridge of the UHS Resolute hummed with controlled chaos as Admiral Marcus Steele stood at the command console. The tactical display before him projected a three-dimensional representation of the Cygnus Void, a vast expanse of blackened space littered with the remnants of ancient starship battles. A perfect battleground. Status report, Steele ordered, his voice calm yet commanding. Commander Alan Grayson, his second-in-command, replied swiftly. Scout ships confirm the enemy fleet is en route. Estimated arrival in 7 hours. Numbers exceed 500 vessels. Steele's jaw tightened, but his expression remained inscrutable. Their arrogance will be their undoing. They assume their size grants them strength. Grayson smirked, adjusting his crisp uniform. They'll learn. Shall I brief the strike teams? Steele nodded. They know what to do. Precision over brute force. Every move we make must count. In the Resolute's hangar, Lieutenant Eric Thorne stood among his squadron, addressing the group of fighter pilots with the confidence of someone who had seen and survived the worst. His wiry frame belied his intensity, and his piercing blue eyes swept over the assembled men. We've all read the reports, Thorne began, pacing in front of his sleek, black fighter craft. The Galactic Council thinks they can overwhelm us with sheer numbers. They don't understand what they're walking into. One of the younger pilots, a fresh-faced recruit named Mason, raised his hand hesitantly. Sir, is it true their flagship alone is bigger than half our fleet? Thorne chuckled dryly. It's true, but size doesn't win battles. Tactics, discipline, and guts do. Stick to the plan, and we'll make them regret coming here. The pilots nodded, their initial anxiety giving way to steely resolve. For humanity, failure wasn't an option. Hours later, the Resolute sensors detected the arrival of the Galactic Council fleet. The vast armada emerged from hyperspace, its ships casting an ominous glow against the backdrop of the void. At the center of the formation loomed the Celestial Wrath, its massive hull bristling with weaponry. On board the alien flagship, Admiral Dranth Voss watched the tactical display with an air of smug certainty. Deploy the forward cruisers, he ordered. Flush out their positions. Humanity won't stand a chance. The Council's cruisers advanced, their energy shields shimmering as they spread into a wide formation. But as they moved deeper into the void, something strange happened. There was no sign of the human fleet. Where are they? Voss muttered, his confidence faltering. Suddenly, the Council's lead ships erupted in flames. Invisible human ships, equipped with advanced cloaking technology, decloaked and unleashed a devastating barrage of railgun fire. The precision of the attack was surgical. Engines, weapon systems, and command decks were targeted with deadly accuracy. From the Resolute's bridge, Steele observed the chaos unfolding on the tactical display. His plan was working perfectly. Phase 1 complete, Grayson reported. Enemy vanguard crippled. Remaining forces are regrouping. Good, Steele replied. Time for Phase 2. Deploy the second wave. A new group of human ships emerged from the shadows, striking at the Council fleet's exposed flanks. Among them was Thorne's fighter squadron, weaving through enemy lines with uncanny precision. Thorne's voice crackled over the comms. Target those cruisers' engines. Leave them dead in the water. His squadron responded with disciplined efficiency, their smaller, faster ships outmaneuvering the lumbering alien vessels. Plasma rounds tore through enemy hulls, leaving wreckage in their wake. On board one of the disabled Council ships, a Valexan officer struggled to comprehend the sudden reversal. How are they doing this? Their ships are so small. They're coordinated, his superior barked, and they're using advanced targeting algorithms. We underestimated them. As the battle raged, Admiral Voss grew increasingly agitated. Reports of casualties and losses flooded the Celestial Wrath's bridge. His confidence had turned to anger. Consolidate the fleet, he roared. Overwhelm them with firepower. The Council ships began to tighten their formation, focusing their fire on the human vessels. The sky lit up with brilliant beams of energy and explosions as the two fleets clashed in earnest. On board the Resolute, Steele remained calm despite the mounting tension. He leaned closer to the tactical display, his sharp eyes analyzing every movement. They're reacting as expected, he said. They're trying to regroup. That's our opening. He turned to Grayson. Signal the remaining ships. Execute the pincer maneuver. Grayson nodded, relaying the order. Across the void, human ships that had been lying in wait now surged forward, striking the Council fleet from behind. In the thick of the battle, Thorne's squadron faced overwhelming odds. A trio of Council fighters pursued him, their energy weapons grazing his shields. Thorne, they're on your tail, Mason shouted over the comms. Relax, rookie, Thorne replied, his voice steady. Watch and learn. With a sharp turn, Thorne guided his fighter into a debris field, using the wreckage as cover. The pursuing ships followed, but their larger size made them slower to react. Thorne's ship darted through the debris, emerging behind his pursuers. Gotcha, he muttered, firing a volley of plasma rounds that obliterated the enemy's ships. Mason's voice came through again, awestruck. How do you make it look so easy? Experience, Thorne said with a smirk. Now get back in formation. The battle reached its climax as the Resolute launched a final, concentrated assault on the Celestial Wrath. Steele knew that taking out the flagship would break the enemy's morale. Focus all firepower on their bridge, he ordered. The human fleet obeyed, their combined firepower overwhelming the flagship's shields. On board the Celestial Wrath, Admiral Voss realized too late that his position was untenable. Admiral, we've lost shields, an officer cried. Voss slammed his fist on the console, his arrogance replaced by desperation. Retreat. Order all ships to retreat. But there was no escape. A final volley from the Resolute pierced the flagship's hull, triggering a catastrophic explosion. As the remnants of the Council fleet fled, the void fell silent once more. On board the Resolute, the crew erupted into cheers, but Steele remained stoic. This isn't over, he said quietly. They'll be back, and next time, they'll be even more desperate. Grayson approached, his expression one of admiration. Still, we sent them a message they won't forget. Steele nodded, his gaze fixed on the holographic display. Yes, and we'll be ready when they return. The black expanse of space near Proxima Theta was unnervingly quiet. On the bridge of the UHS Resolute, Admiral Marcus Steele surveyed the battlefield displayed on the tactical hologram. The Galactic Council's armada, now over 2,000 ships strong, loomed on the far edge of the system, their sheer size an overwhelming wall of impending destruction. Humanity's fleet, just over 100 vessels, waited in disciplined silence, their smaller forms dwarfed by the alien force. "Status?" Steele asked, his tone as sharp as a blade. Commander Alan Grayson, standing at his side, scanned the data on his console. "Enemy fleet is holding position. They've established a forward blockade near the asteroid belt, likely preparing to push straight through to Earth." Steele's lips pressed into a thin line. "They think they can roll over us with brute force." He glanced at the men and women on his bridge. "They're about to learn otherwise." In the Resolute's hangar, Lieutenant Eric Thorne and his squadron prepared for launch. The tension in the air was palpable as engineers made final adjustments to their sleek fighter craft. Thorne tightened his gloves, his expression hard. "Listen up," he barked, his voice cutting through the hum of machinery. "This is the big one. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to show them what humanity is made of. Every shot counts. Every maneuver matters. Stick to your training, and we'll send them packing." The younger pilots nodded, their fear giving way to determination. One of them, Mason, approached Thorne as the squadron prepared to board their fighters. "Sir," Mason began hesitantly, "do you really think we can win?" Thorne clapped a hand on Mason's shoulder. "It's not about thinking we can win, rookie. It's about making sure they lose." The Council's fleet advanced, their ships moving in unison like a tide of destruction. Admiral Dranth Voss stood on the bridge of the Celestial Wrath, his confidence renewed by the size and strength of his armada. "This time," Voss growled, "we'll crush them completely. No mercy." Vorktal, standing nearby, watched the tactical display with growing unease. Though he had no love for humanity, their recent victories had shaken his faith in the Council's invincibility. "Admiral," Tal said cautiously, "we cannot assume this will be easy. They've proven themselves resourceful." "They're cornered animals," Voss interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "They'll lash out, but it won't matter. Numbers will prevail." Tal's crystalline form refracted the light of the tactical display, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "Your overconfidence blinds you, Admiral. We should prepare for." "They're nothing," Voss snapped, "and you'll see that soon enough." The battle began with a blinding explosion of light and sound as the Council fleet fired their opening salvo. Torrents of energy beams and plasma bolts tore through the void, aimed directly at humanity's defensive line. But Steele had anticipated this. "Initiate the scattering protocol," he ordered, his voice calm. Human ships broke formation, splitting into smaller, faster groups. The enemy's coordinated assault struck empty space, their weapons trailing harmlessly past the agile vessels. Grayson smirked. "They're trying to hit ghosts." "Not for long," Steele replied. "Deploy the assault wings. Let's show them how we fight." Thorne's squadron streaked through the chaos, their fighters weaving through enemy fire like needles threading a deadly fabric. His voice crackled over the comms. "Target their command ships. Disrupt their coordination." The Council fleet, designed for overwhelming firepower but reliant on centralized command, began to falter. Human fighters struck critical points, weapon arrays, shield generators, engine cores, leaving larger vessels vulnerable to precision strikes from heavier human ships. On board his fighter, Thorne's hands flew over the controls as he dodged enemy fire. "Mason, on my 6, he barked. "I'm here, sir." Mason's voice was breathless but steady. "Stick close and watch your corners. We're not out of this yet." Meanwhile, on the Resolute's bridge, Steele monitored the battle with surgical precision. The Council fleet was beginning to collapse under the relentless assault, their lines breaking apart as human ships exploited every weakness. "They're scattering," Grayson reported. "We got them on the run?" Steele's expression remained stern. "Not yet. They still have the flagship. All wings converge on the Celestial Wrath. Take it out, and the rest will crumble." The Resolute's main cannons powered up, their glow casting an eerie light across the bridge. Steele leaned forward, his voice cold. Fire. A barrage of concentrated plasma beams streaked across the void, slamming into the Celestial Wrath's shields. The massive flagship shuddered under the impact, its defenses buckling. On board the Celestial Wrath, Admiral Voss's composure finally broke. What's happening? He roared as the ship's systems blared alarms. Shields are down, a Valexan officer cried. Hull integrity compromised. Voss turned to Tal, his expression desperate. Do something. Tal's mandibles clicked in resignation. I warned you. Humanity fights like nothing we've faced before. And now, we pay the price. As the Celestial Wrath reeled, Lieutenant Thorne's squadron closed in for the kill. Thorne led the charge, his fighter weaving through the flagship's defensive fire. Mason with me, Thorne ordered. Yes, sir. Mason replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. The two fighters targeted the Celestial Wrath's exposed bridge. Thorne's voice was grim as he spoke. Let's end this. With a final volley of plasma rounds, the bridge erupted in a fiery explosion. The Celestial Wrath, the pride of the Council fleet, fractured and detonated, its destruction sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The remnants of the Council fleet broke ranks, retreating in disarray. On board the Resolute, cheers erupted as the tactical display confirmed the victory. Grayson turned to Steele, his expression triumphant. We did it, sir. They're retreating. Steele nodded, though his face remained somber. This is only the beginning. They'll be back, and they'll be more dangerous than ever. But today we showed them what humanity is capable of. He turned to the viewport, watching the shattered remains of the Council fleet disappear into the void. His voice was quiet, but resolute. Let them come. We'll be ready. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council reconvened, their chamber now heavy with tension. Vorik Tal addressed the assembly, his voice filled with both awe and warning. We thought humanity was fragile, weak, insignificant. We were wrong, he said. They are a force unlike any we have faced. And if we do not learn from this, we are doomed to repeat our mistakes. The holographic transmission from Earth arrived moments later. It was a simple message, but its meaning was clear. Peace is offered, but never again shall we be underestimated.